very similar mindset of having a utility attacker that's a little bit more disruptive with the Vicavolt that goes well with that Melanie package. And then you've also got the Articuno on the other side, which is a little bit more of a paralysis disruption. So you've got item lock and paralysis working very well alongside the Palkia, because realistically, Subspace Swell and Star Portal as bits of text on that Palkia VStar are very powerful and shouldn't be counted out of this current meta.
But yeah, here we are, going straight into our game 1 of our quarterfinals, our feature match here with Sander playing his Mewtwo VUnion deck versus Mateusz playing that Vicavolt v Palkia list that we've had a little taste of before in Warsaw. And Sander is going first. He's going to be staring down at that Celebrations Mew, which we haven't seen this weekend, I don't believe, with that Mysterious Tail ability, thinking I might need to get all my items played as soon as possible. Good thing is, if Sander can get those Curliers out, he'll be able to start using that great, fantastic abilities, reminiscent of Trade, you know, that refinement ability, being able to discard cards and still continue drawing. It means he doesn't have to necessarily make full use of those items straight away. Yeah,
and then the ability to have the Gardevoir on top with the Shining Arcana, which realistically was a energy acceleration approach whenever it was used before, but this is a great way just to guarantee drawing cards, because you look at those top 2 cards and attach any number of basic energy cards you see there, but you know, you don't have to, and then you just take the cards and put them in your hand. So guaranteed draw of 2. If there is a psychic energy there, could in theory attach it to Pokemon. So a great bit of text there, and some of the turns we're seeing with this Mewtwo VUnion deck with the Curliers, and in fact the healing approach it has using that Gengar is an amazing bit of smart thinking and out-the-box thinking from Sander.
Yeah, it's something we've seen a couple of times before, and what we've considered, I think, even when we were talking about Warsaw, was trying to find big, bulky Pokemon. How can it sort of survive attacks? Mewtwo VUnion already have 310 HP. It has a special ability as well from the left leg of the card, really sort of protecting it from effects of attacks at the same time. And then alongside V-Guard energy, protecting it from big Pokemon attacks, such as the Mews or such as other Lugias. Just means they can't one-shot it, and then they can just heal using the Gengar and the Scoop Up Nets and the Gardevoirs and the different Curliers and pieces. But yeah, just the Gormandize, and then he got very quickly Marnied back by Mateusz as he goes into his turn there. He gets to sort of a chance to bench the Palkia V, which we've only seen a couple of times, but of course to great effect by Magnus as well. There's the Battle VIP pass, identifying that Vicavolt V and the Greninja. Opportunity to discard those waters to activate those 4 of Melanies as well. So there's lots and lots of pieces that Mateusz will be looking to try and utilize to try and get that Vicavolt attack off. That's dealing that 50 damage in paralyzing bolts, but ensuring your opponent not being able to use item cards going forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination there, because the Vicavolt, I can imagine, is great into the Comfey matchup, but it doesn't have that ability to increase the numbers that you would see with the Regieleki build that has the VMAX that pumps up the attack damage by 30. So the Vicavolt is a pure disruption-based approach, but we do have, you know, the speed lightning energy, the concealed cards, and all of these different draw methods for this deck. So you do start accumulating quite a nice hand of bits and bobs. You don't need as much of an engine through something like a Barrel engine or an Inteleon engine. You just need that Celebrations Mew plus a few drawing outs.
Yeah, the Celebrations Mew is a great card to use. And Sander there was Marnied, of course, so he had the 5 cards in hand. Is looking at seeing what he can do. He's benched that routes and scooped her up multiple times, and maybe looking at seeing what he can really do. But I think maybe he's just trying to maximize the value from the Gormandize here, just as he had to use up 2 Scoop Up Nets. And it looks like, yeah, it was just a Gormandize back up to the 7. He didn't want to sort of waste turns. He also puts a Manaphy down as well, protecting him from that Radiant Greninja, which is a really scary card to stare down at. Back over to Mateusz. That's so speed energies coming in to play, drawing more cards, concealed cards being used. This game is going already at quite a frantic pace that I thought didn't expect.
Yeah, I mean, that Greninja, the idea of the Moonlight Shuriken taking out 2 Curliers or 2 routes as well, that's a lot of removal of draw engine. And the list Sander plays, often those first turns, giving up prizes, taking it a bit slower. And I think at this point, Mateusz is going to want to try and either get into the Vicavolt lock if he thinks it's valuable enough, or maybe start trying to attack with the Palkia and just keep announcing attacks as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Mateusz is going to be able to utilize some of his attackers to full effect, because as you mentioned, the Vicavolt dealing 50 doesn't really do too much damage, but of course, if he can keep disrupting and then eventually turn it into a Super Zap Cannon for 190 damage at some stage, maybe that's a one way for him to be able to really ramp up the damage on Sander's side of the board. But of course, that Snorlax is 130 HP Snorlax, not the 150 one. Can take a number of hits before it goes down, can keep using Gormandize to keep going. But as you can see there's the air balloon straight into the Vicavolt, and we do start to see a gust of the Manaphy.
Because of that weakness, that is going to be both item lock and removal of the Manaphy. So the Greninja now online with that star portal from the Palkia. There has been, I think, 1 water being put into the discard pile, so a few more water that activates star portal. So the item lock plus a knockout early on, early pressure. There is 1 water energy in the prizes there, 6 in the deck, maybe 1 or 2 in the discard pile. There is a Melanie available, but that's not going to work for the Greninja. So if looking to really put that pressure on the Curlier, which can't get out of range of the Greninja Moonlight Shuriken, because they have 80 hit points each, they will need to be protected by that Manaphy as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's very minimal recovery from that aspect outside of the Silene. So typically, from Sander's perspective, he'll be looking to try and get to that big Mewtwo VUnion as soon as possible, because it's really difficult for Mateusz to actually knock it out, other than sort of resetting it up with maybe softening up with those paralyzing gaze. But then because the Mewtwo can heal, and Sander doesn't mind that turn where it is healing, it's not too much of an issue. So we do see Sander play the Peonia here, looks at the left-hand free cards and place those items back there because they're not going to be too useful in this scenario. He's going to continue having to dig through his deck right now. Good thing is, from Sander, he may not know this, but there's only 1 Marnie in Mateusz's list, and he's already used it. So there's going to be very minimal hand disruption from here on out.
But the disruption to the draw engine from that Greninja is a scary threat. At this point, that Greninja has no energy on it. It can be quite tough to accelerate too, and using that star portal once might make it hard to do consecutive Greninjas, because you do discard 2 energy with it. So there is that fear of just 1 Greninja being done and then gets knocked out. But that seems like the route that's going to be strategized here for Mateusz.
Yeah, it's definitely an option here, but also if he does end up going that route at some stage, as we see the Melanie there from the discard pile to the active Vicavolt V, as soon as he does go that plan and direction, Sander will then have the option then to use items yet again. So it just reactivates his board and sort of getting a chance to play all those item cards that he might be building up in that hand there following that Gormandize. So lots of different options there available. It's just with that routes, with the energy currently attached, it has that sort of hit and run attack as well, just a 10 damage with the teleportation burst and sort of switching it out to a bench Pokemon. But it's mainly kind of giving him a bit of a pivot option, I think, at this current moment in time, but also giving maybe Mateusz a bit of thinking about, oh, do I have to target the 2 Curliers? What about this routes with energy on it? As
Brilliant.
we see further energies attached here to the Vicavolt V.
Yeah, Vicavolt being quite a heavy retreat cost. So over-attaching there gives the option to retreat and still have energy available on it. In theory here, retreat gets another water into the discard pile. Yep. Greninja gets into the active spot. There's now 3 water in the discard pile. Star Portal puts those 3 water onto the Greninja, and this is going to disrupt that draw engine for Sander greatly and start beginning that prize race a lot more.
Yeah, so this will be 2 prizes taken, likely to target the 2 Curliers, both with 80 HP. Very easy targets for the Moonlight Shuriken. It's not very easy for Mateusz to chain that attacker onto the Greninja, so we're probably unlikely to see it happen back to back. But you know, he's going to be thinking, well, Sander's not really going to be doing too much right now anytime soon. But this, as I mentioned, this activates those item cards yet again for Sander's side of the board. He's got a number of ball searches in hand. He's got a level ball to grab another Curlier. We can see none of them are prized, so he's got 2 more in deck. He does play the 4-4 line that's available to him. So now Sander's going to be looking for those opportunities to get that set up now so that he can start bursting through himself. At the moment, Mateusz, you know, 3 prizes down, so 3 prizes remaining to go. There'll be a stage where Sander will have to try and get that big Mewtwo VUnion out.
Yeah, no Roxannes to worry about with that 3 prizes. And also a fair thing to mention is that last turn, that was 5 energy coming into play. Well, 6. 5 energy into play with the Melanie, an attachment, and the 3 from Star Portal, and 5 of them were taken out of play. So it was a very expensive turn in terms of board state. It hasn't left Mateusz in a strong position for the next turns, but he's just thinking, if I can get rid of as many of those refinements from the Curlier as possible, that should slow down Sander, even though he can now start using items again. And so that was the strategy behind that Greninja, but it could come back to bite him if Sander finds everything he needs.
Yeah, Sander's already got one piece of the Mewtwo VUnion into the discard from that trekking shoes already. Does have the Ultra Ball that he's just played, discarding that Gengar that we've mentioned with that really cool ability from the Sword and Shield base set, Life Shaker, where you can, as often as you like, move 1 damage counter from one of your Psychic Pokemon to another. It's another way of healing without necessarily using that regenerative attack from the Mewtwo, from its left hand or head of Mewtwo, that super regeneration attack, which allows it to heal 200, which is what we typically have seen from the NAIC list and other Mewtwo VUnion lists, control lists, I should say, in this perspective. But having a heal from other cards, he can go straight into Final Burn. He can go straight into Cysplosion and put 16 damage counters anywhere on your opponent's board. So lots of more utility in terms of actually becoming a bit more of an attacking Mewtwo list.
Yeah, and if there is any of those attackers out there that are just tipping the edge of a Mewtwo knockout, thinking if they heal that 200 damage, they still get knocked out next turn, well, now you can even take some of that damage off and heal it all off in those cases. You know, if they're tipping that 290 area, 300, especially with, you know, Mew VMAX hitting big numbers with the powered tablets, with the Lugia fully powered up with choice belts and powerful colorless. Yeah, this deck is a very unique approach to Mewtwo VUnion. The V-Guard energy in there to help take some of those big hitters down in terms of value with the damage. But at this point, like we said, the strategy from Mateusz is to try and slow down Sander's development of the board, whilst also accepting that it's going to affect his own board. But we've got so many options.
One heads from the Silene there by Sander. And I think Mateusz putting himself into a position where he's got 3 prizes remaining is actually fantastic already. And there's a scoop up net being put back to the top, because there will be a stage where Sander will have to remove some of these Pokemon from his board so that he can simply just have the Mewtwo out and not take too much damage, or just keep healing and then kind of go through that cycle of things. And if it's just a paralyzing gaze from that Vicavolt, because it's just 50 damage, there'll be a turn where you could just kind of retaliate and final burn it to the discard pile. Yeah,
because in Mateusz's list there is a single boss, which we saw early on for the Manaphy. There is some cross switches in there, so there's a few different options there, and the single prizes currently in play would add up to too many prizes. So as you mentioned, at least 2 of them have to go. There is potential for an Echoing Horn play in the future, but I think maybe that combination of Gust plus Echoing Horn might be a bit too out of range for Mateusz. So
Sander continuing with the Gormandize for now. It has 7 cards now in hand. Be interested to see. Kind of expecting Mateusz to go back into the Vicavolt to kind of continue disrupting where he can whilst he builds up his board a bit further.
I think there's a Melanie available, so that Melanie to the Vicavolt plus a hard retreat from Greninja is possible.
Yep, so with the 1 energy already on the Greninja, so that's why we were talking about it's quite difficult to chain attackers here. He's actually attached it to the Palkia, which is fine because he can still attach from hand to the Vicavolt if he chooses to go down that route.
Just looking to take prizes.
Yeah, or continue looking to take prizes with that Palkia, and giving, maybe just saying, Sander, well, maybe I've disrupted enough just by that 1 attack to take out the Manaphy, and I've been able to take enough prizes here that I can just attack 3 times and hopefully win.
Just look at the hand size there with the combination of speed, lightning energy, and the concealed cards. Every turn drawing multiple cards into that deck sort of reminds me of the sort of draw engines you'd see with the old hand size win conditions, where you're trading 1 card to get 2 cards into hand until you got a massive hand. But
the unknown hand.
Exactly. But at this stage, it's more just about getting as many options as possible. And we see there the Palkia, Subspace Swell, knocks out the Snorlax. No item lock here for Sander, but there is going to be some disruption with how much the draw engine has been attacked. At this point, Sander is really fishing to try and find that Mewtwo VUnion.
Yeah, this is going to be the really tough stage here now, because Sander, in effect, doesn't want to give any more prizes, because he's got to think maybe there's an Echoing Horn from Mateusz's side. So if Mateusz can take 1 more knockout and then use Echoing Horn, and then potentially use Escape Rope or something like the cross switches to kind of bring that active, he'll win the game. So Sander has to look at trying to develop this Mewtwo VUnion as soon as possible now, and also get those single prizes off the board. That's the ideal aspect, but we'll see what he's able to do. There's the first refinement. Discarding, gets another Mewtwo VUnion
I think that
piece.
might be the last piece from deck, actually, after the deck search. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure you've been tracking a bit better, but the way these guys play, they play so fast that...
There's 3 pieces in the discard, so it's just that final piece in hand now. I think he might have 2 scoop-up nets in hand as well, which is almost as ideal as you can get it. He does discard with a final refinement. There's a Pukimuku to continue drawing through deck. Lots of item cards, lots of ball search. Now he's just got to try and identify a way of getting as many of these Pokemon off the board as possible, because that's the threat, right? You just don't want to be leaving any of those available for a simple KO on that side. So it's just a case of, he at the same time also developing, he has to make that attachment to the Mewtwo VUnion, so he can't attach a V-Guard energy to maybe a Gardevoir, which has a bit more HP, and try and protect it from a Palkia as well. So many little options, but just not quite enough right now. He's just eyeing it up though.
Yeah, and in this situation, I wonder if that Vicavolt through the Paralyzing Bolt, stopping the ability to scoop up, could have allowed the time for Mateusz to start powering up a Greninja and focus on the single prize. But by going down this route, committing to having to knock out that Mewtwo VUnion, most likely at this stage, with the scoop up net Sander has available, the V-Guard energy going to go onto that VUnion card right there. The scoop up net on the Snorlax, going to put it into the active spot. And then we do still have 2 refinement Curliers on the bench, but needs to knock out both of them, which he can't do as one of them has been scooped up. That final Curlier on the bench can remain. Hasn't thought necessarily about the Echoing Horn. Maybe he'll need to scoop up the last one.
Yeah, I think Sanders identified that. That's why he's going to Silene and try and get 2 cards. He's choosing 1 scoop up net. So Mateusz will have 1 turn to be able to try and get hold of that Curlier as soon as possible. There's no Gardevoir in Sanders' hand. He's just going to be Union gaining at this stage. He's already put 1 Psychic Energy. There's the second. So we'll be attaching to this Mewtwo VUnion with Union Gain when he gets the opportunity to do so, and is well protected by that V-Guard energy, also having limited his bench as well.
So at this point, if Mateusz can find the cross switches, get that Curlier up, and potentially be able to knock it out this turn, then that would open up the ability to do an Echoing Horn play to get that final KO that is needed.
Yep.
Again, the Gust methods that we see in Mateusz's deck is 1 boss and 4 cross switches. The only accessibility to those is the first time used. There is no PAL pads, there's no Silenes or any way to get it back. So the fact that a boss has been used, there has to be 4 cross switches used during the end of this game alongside that Echoing Horn. Yeah,
Sander really, he's just kind of making sure his decisions here. He really would have wanted to find a way to kind of draw into maybe that scoop up net. Next turn, he's just silening that. He doesn't want to give up the V that he's had to discard as well. That Shadow Rider, Calyrex V, because that's an easy target also just for the final 2 prizes there and then. And with Mateusz having such a big hand, that's going to be the threat there. So he couldn't.
Hadn't even noticed that. That V was just sitting in the discard pile, ready to be Echoing Horned.
And yeah, that's the biggest concern here for Sander right now. He just needs to make sure he can try and draw a card. That Pukimuku's already been to the bottom of the deck, so that means I think he's already pitched, has he not?
Yeah, I think he's already pitched it.
Yeah, he's already pitched it, so he can't use it more than once per turn. But I guess it's sort of setting himself up for the next turn and hoping for the opportunity to maybe find a way to remove that Curlier out of play. It's not quite like the Ghastly, which allows you to kind of jump it back into hand with that amazing little attack it's got for 20 damage. But here we go. There's a Union gain for 1 colorless energy, attaching up to 2 psychics for this particular VUnion card, and going onto its attachment there. So now it has 3 ready to use Explosion at this current moment in time, and it's just back over to Mateusz.
So we see that Melanie coming through. As mentioned, the only Gust effect left are the item cards in the cross switches. So that hasn't denied the ability to use a boss's orders, as it's been used already in the discard pile. Attachment of Lightning there, and we shall see whether those cross switches are in that massive hand. I do believe they probably are, based off of how much draw has happened, and Echoing Horn available too.
Horn as well. Oh, there's an escape rope. Doesn't even need to use the cross switches. The Echoing Horn will guarantee the win for Mateusz here as well.
Hadn't even seen the escape rope. That in this situation is basically a boss or a cross switcher.
Yeah, so that's the issue, and Sander there is kind of staring down at Mateusz with that cross switcher as well. Not looking good for Sander. It's getting to that stage again where he's just having to face a very difficult matchup in Top Cut. But he's going to do everything that he can, of course. The worrying thing is he's not really able to hand disrupt Mateusz's massive hand.
Yeah, and at this point as well, you can see 2 fully powered up attackers in the Palkia VStar with that subspace swell, and there's also that Vicavolt that can do the super zap cannon on the bench too. So anything that is brought back into play with an Echoing Horn would be available. So a knockout here from the Mewtwo VUnion using that final burn for 300 damage would not be worthwhile. But at this time, there is plenty of time in these top 8 games, 75 minutes, so it is worth playing out just to see if that Echoing Horn is there. Otherwise, the Mewtwo might be able to tank its way through all these hits and heal it back. But until that Echoing Horn is played, Sander has no reason to think that he's out of this game right now.
Yeah, exactly. For him, he just has to kind of continue playing through. He did look to play out of range for that Echoing Horn already by putting that Calyrex back into the deck, using Silene or to the top of the deck. Does just final burn for 2 prizes. But there's the Echoing Horn, and he does obviously see the cross switches, and Sander will pick up those VUnion pieces.
Get it into the discard pile. It can really kick you off with a good start in the game plan. But we see the Serena kicking things off. It's the first time I think we've seen this Radiant being used. And what in particular was it used for in this Sander deck here?
So in a similar way where we're going to be, how Sander's built it to use the healing effect with that Gengar to be able to spread damage across the Psychic Pokemon. Radiant Serena's ability, that Elegant Heal, once during your turn you may heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon, can in effect wipe out a lot of damage across the board. That's a maximum of 100 being healed from.
And then with the Scoop Up net, you could put a load of damage on the Gardevoir, for example, scoop that up, put the routes down, put the 20 damage on that, start healing up with Serena. So you can start going in excess of 200 damage removed from play. Unfortunately, Serena itself can't have damage moved to it through the Gengar just due to the typing. But a very cheeky strategy, and I don't think many people thought Radiant Serena would be seeing any play anytime soon, as healing historically not been that effective in Pokemon since one-hit knockout strategies have been so popular.
Yeah, definitely, and I think I've seen some of the earlier variants where they were trying to use potentially something like a Clefable, I believe, that also sort of heals some damage as well. But you know, this one Radiant Pokemon being able to do so without sort of committing additional space is one of the reasons why they may have gone down this route. And as you see there, Sander being able to very quickly scoop up net that Serena out of the active slot. Does re-bench it because he wants to be Gormandizing as much as he can. So does Gormandize back up to the 7, and it's back over to Mateusz, who does open Greninja and the Battle VIP pass. Not quite a Mew that he would have wanted to open, one of the 4 Celebration Mews, which has been akin to the Jirachi, which you may have mentioned, I think, yesterday as well.
Oh, the old skateboard.
Yeah.
That was good. Those were the good days.
That mysterious tail ability, being able to look at the top 6 of your cards, reveal an item there, and put it into your hand, which is a great way of being able to just kind of find those pieces like those cross switches, like those scoop up nets, like those escape routes, Echoing Horn, Energy Search, all these pieces of the puzzle that Mateusz plays in his list. So just looking for the opportunity, and that's why he's chosen to get the Mew down, because it's, even when something gets knocked out, it's something you would happily promote to continue kind of digging through your deck for certain cards. Yeah,
we just see the Trekking Shoes there. Escape Rope going into the discard pile was a vital card in that last game as another gusting ability. And so we did see that disappear there. And that could come back as relevant later on. But for now, Mateusz is more interested in progressing his game state.
Yeah, beyond that, it was just a pass from Mateusz, because it's back over to Sander, who's very quickly pitched and evolved that route into a Curlier. And so drawing 3 cards this turn, or 4 cards this turn after the draw card for his actual turn starting there, and going into the Trekking Shoes. Energy already in the discard pile as well. So things moving along. The Pioneer will allow him to pull out another routes from there as well. A relatively big hand, so he'll be able to pick and choose which cards are less useful in this matchup. That Vicavolt doesn't have any energy yet attached either. No energy in hand for Mateusz to be able to conceal cards and then sort of utilize that Melanie. So Sander's in not a bad position here at the moment, at least.
Has Sander had a deck search yet? Because this, these 3 prize cards, I don't know how much of it was targeted or just how much of it was a Pioneer as a draw support in a way.
Yeah, it's more like a draw supporter, but having to just being able to check certain pieces which he won't need. Things like the Flannery could be useful to try and remove some of those speed energies attached to that Vicavolt V. But generally, here you go. He's been able to sort of also pull off a level ball here as well. Also, just to double check what's available. Just eye up the mana fee there, just making sure that that won't be. He won't see his routes easily targeted down by things like that Moonlight Shuriken from that Greninja yet again. So just quickly pulls that out of the deck from the level ball. As mentioned, I believe he did get another routes from the prizes as well. So we'll see a second one come down shortly. But yeah, there's still plenty of time. Like I said, it's just come under as if it did start at the 50-minute mark now in terms of where we got to. So there's a Curly also we see in hand. And there's continued Trek and Choose.
That mana fee is so key because Greninja could, in theory, attack next turn because there's a Palkia V on the bench. The moment the Star Portal is online, at any moment that Greninja can come into play. And considering how many routes are going to be benched here, mana fee will need to go down. But that mana fee reducing the healing potential of the Mewtwo VUnion at the end of the game if it does survive that long. At this stage, a protected board state early, Gorman dies, plus Curlier's in play. Well, a Curlier and two routes.
Just a pass back from Mateusz after Sander Gorman dies.
My goodness.
Again, playing a bit of the slow game, but there's nothing much he can do. I believe that's
you
boss.
See his hands there.
A boss, a Melanie, and a cross switcher. Just some unfortunate cards there. Not doing too much, but of course, Sander not actually doing too much until he gets the big boy out.
And that's why you said the Mew is the perfect start, because when you start doing these slower turns where you're passing a lot, you just get a few more chances to dip into your deck and potentially find something worth having. And at this stage, we do see the Palkia VStar down, opening up that Star Portal potential. There is no water energy right now in the discard. We would have seen Melanie being used to draw some cards as well. So at this stage, energy really the missing piece. 6 water in the deck, 4 speed lightning, and 1 just vanilla basic lightning. So going to struggle to really get the concealed cards going, the draw engine that we spoke about before of speed lightning, concealed cards, and Melanies.
And it's where Sander's already starting to use that refinement ability to kind of draw an additional 6 cards. Of course, it's a net gain of +3 because he has to discard 1 for each time he uses it. But he's really starting to really pull through his deck right now and sort of draw the cards that he requires. Eyeing up an Ultra Ball as well, maybe targeting that Gardevoir just to kind of keep drawing cards at this stage without much of a drawback. So lots of different options here, and as you can see, Sander's deck starting to really thin out. He's starting to see a lot of those pieces. He does grab that Gardevoir, which it's got a fantastic Shining Arcana ability. Does have a pretty cool attack as well, which could be utilized, but very unlikely. It's that Brainwave 60+ for 3 colorless energy, but 60+ for 30 for each psychic energy attached to this Pokemon. But yeah, it's got a number of options here. So there it is. It's just being able to just draw 2 cards this turn. So Sander now has a net gain of 5, discarding 3 after drawing 5, of course, and just Silenes for 1 heads. I'm just identifying the pieces that he needs. Maybe to scoop up nets, because there will be turns where he's going to have to get rid of those single prizes and could start chaining that Gardevoir as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, and with that Silene, there is another one in the prizes there as well as the Pal Pad. So the typical loop, if Sander were to try and lock a person out with this deck, would be through multiple Silene and the Pal Pad, which does have a way of breaking through unlucky circumstances, but rare to happen. And what we do see here is that Greninja now out the active spot with a scoop up net, starting that Mew search, and now no longer will Mateusz be chilling and sitting there. He's now got the ability to start activating various item cards in his deck and getting that chance to get a Luminion, which will be able to get a Marnie out, which is huge considering how big the hand size is for Sander.
Yeah, I think at this point, though, Sander won't be too upset about that because he does have 3 live draw 2 cards Pokemon on his support on his bench. So
and any VUnions that's in the deck still will be through that Marnie or into the hand.
Yeah,
closer to the top. And if he's not shuffling that deck and just continuing to refinement, it's just going to put it closer to the top for him.
Exactly. So it's going to be one of those where it's just getting pushed into a position now where Sander might start to think about trying to attack and utilize that Mewtwo VUnion as soon as possible. But Mateusz didn't really have a choice, in all honesty. His only other draw support is Melanie, and with no water energies in the discard, cannot be activated.
Yeah, and we see another Ultra Ball being used here to go into the deck, another Mew being taken out. And at this stage, Mateusz is going to try and form that comeback. A bit slow at the start here, especially compared to that first game where it was explosive from the off. And this is, with every slower controlling archetype that Sander has, the typical approach most people will say to try and beat it is try and get prizes as quickly as possible and hope that you get it before Sander sets up. And this kind of start is not ideal for that.
Yeah, and it's just passed back over to Mateusz, and that's a quick refinement of that Mewtwo leg piece there. And then that Shining Arcana for a draw 2, and then another refinement after picking up another piece. So that's 2 pieces there already. Does also hold a Shadow Rider Calyrex, which he won't want to necessarily discard straight away until he's prepared his board and not giving up too many prizes, of course. But now is beginning to set things up. Does Peoria and pick up the Power Pad where he put it there originally, of course, because he knows he's going to need access to that as well.
And that last one that he hasn't had a chance to look at in the prize is just a level ball. And at this stage, that's not really as relevant because it's part of that early setup strategy. So that Power Pad and the Silene will likely be taken here. Everything else put back in by Sander will be pieces he feels aren't relevant to his game plan now. Could be something like a Gormandized Snorlax, maybe even that Shadow Rider Calyrex we might see go in there.
There you go. There it is.
Yeah, there we go.
He knows he potentially wants that Ultra Ball later as well to maybe sort of, again, kind of thinking about the Marnie, you can reshuffle some of those better cards that he might have put to the bottom of Marnie back around the deck if he searches with an Ultra Ball or another ball search within his deck as well. So
might be needed for the Gengar setup if later on that comes into play.
Yes, there you go. There's the Ultra Ball. Whether he necessarily needs too many cards from this this search itself, yeah, there you go. He hasn't targeted anything, but it's just to shuffle some of those better cards he might have just been Marnied out of back to around the deck. Not necessarily back to the top, of course, but then just kind of give himself that opportunity there. And the Gormanizer looked like just for an additional card. Yeah, so Sander's pretty much setting up here.
And we're starting off here. Mateusz finally getting that concealed cards off, getting water energy into the discard pile. And energy was the key, was lacking in those first turns. And you can see how quickly Mateusz is looking to get water available. Needs to start knocking out something like that Manaphy to be able to open up the Greninja play. But might be concerned that it's too late as the Mewtwo VUnion is looming, and any knockout now will activate that Mewtwo VUnion, put it into play, and I don't think there is anything that can get through that on Mateusz' side in one hit. The Palkia can't reach those numbers when it's got a V-Guard energy on, so it will be able to work that healing cycle that Sander has included in the list.
Yeah, and I think it's down to Mateusz right now to start considering whether, it's something more seasoned players when they get into Top Cut, knowing how the time works and how the sort of going to game 3 works. Maybe it's one of those aspects where he has to start playing for making this quite a long game 2 and then potentially sort of working that sudden death game 3 into his favor. It's one of those things that'll be interesting to try and see if that's a route that Mateusz will look to go to.
Yeah, you just see there Mateusz skipping a few steps for us watching at home, but scoop up net of the Greninja to reactivate concealed cards with a second water energy, drawing 2, and that was communicated by them through the microphone, so they'd have known what's going on, but for those at home who might have missed it, and we see another water energy coming out of the deck, and this is opening up for that Star Portal potential to bring lots of water into the play, and we do see the Vicavolt one attachment away from attacking, but with the Star Portal, it is only to the water Pokemon. So that Vicavolt cannot be attached to via Palkia, and we'll have to be careful.
Yeah, I think just Sander just making sure his own resources are all there as well. There's the Melanie to the Vicavolt. So Mateusz looking for that opportunity to disrupt where possible. Because that is the only draw supporter that Mateusz actually has. Not something you typically see in a lot of lists nowadays.
Maybe looking for those cross switches to attack that Manaphy if possible. Mm-hmm. There's an Echoing Horn he's found there, but he's opting to take none of those.
Looks like he's missed it. Surprisingly, he wouldn't take the card at the very least because Sander doesn't have that sort of disruption available, and it's just a 50 damage from that Vicavolt V, and also item locking Sander right now. But there's another piece, that head of the Mewtwo VUnion now going to the discard pile from that refinement ability, and now it's just one of the awkward spots here. Sander can't use Scoop Up Net to kind of open up a slot for that Mewtwo to come down, so we'll have to allow this Snorlax to eventually go down. But that's absolutely fine from Sander's side of the board, because then he also has that energy attached to the Gardevoir. Might need to look at attaching another one sooner to be able to retreat, because I don't think the Serena has free retreat. No, it's got a bulky 2 retreat as well. So it's just going to be a little bit awkward.
And a quick announcement of Paralyzing Bolt with just a draw for the turn from Mateusz. recognizing at this stage all he has to do is just keep announcing and hoping that the Paralyzing Bolt is enough disruption to keep all of those bench Pokemon in play, and might look to, you know, gust one of them up and try and Paralyzing Bolt that to finish it, or maybe get the Manaphy up and knock that one out so we can activate the Greninja. And we spoke about the loop as well, because at this stage Sander is getting right at the bottom of that deck, so deck out is something you would start thinking about, but with that loop of the Silene and Palpads, there's every possibility to keep cards going.
There's a Silene for 1 head, so Sander's just going to, looks like he's going to grab another Silene to kind of get things looping around to protect himself here, because that paralyzing gaze, being able to kind of limit what Sander can do, or Paralyzing Bolt, sorry, for 50 damage. But that Snorlax will go down and just passes it over. As I mentioned, he does attach a second to that Gardevoir and does get bossed up by Mateusz's 1 boss there. And with Gardevoir taking 30 less damage as well with that V-Guard energy, this is going to be really difficult from that perspective. Does get the Bruno, which is a fantastic way of kind of shuffling that hand back in.
Yeah, you just saw there, putting 5 damage counters onto the Gardevoir, Sander correcting it because of the V-Guard energy. It's key with these top players that they both keep the board state in check. You know, it's easy for people to miss things, especially when you put your own disruption down, and Sander, very aware V-Guard energy is going to take effect. So only 20 damage onto the Gardevoir.
Yeah, it's just using that Shining Arcana ability as well. 1 card remaining in deck. Sander just having a little look. Could start trying to apply pressure by using the attack of the Gardevoir. I did say it was unlikely to happen, but that 90 damage from Brainwave, being able to put it into maybe a 3-shot range whilst it's just taking 20 damage each time.
Maybe a Psychic Energy attachment next turn would bring it in range, because that would take it up to the 120 hit, which 120 plus 90 would get the Vicavolt. And in general, this is a different path to what we expect from Sander's deck. As we mentioned, the Mewtwo VUnion ready to come out, but I do wonder how much Mateusz is hoping for the deck out, as there is 2 Palpads and 2 Silene to loop the final cards, and there's the Bruno as well available to try and reset the hand. But all of these kind of things, they're not guaranteed to last forever, and especially with how much Mateusz's item lock is slowing down the play, the ability to knock out with Gardevoir is key right now.
Yeah, because otherwise it would take 7 hits before that Gardevoir goes down because of that V-Guard energy. And it's got and only 1 could be applied, despite 2 being attached, of course. Does look like he's just used the second attack on the Vicavolt V, that super Zap Cannon for 190 damage, or 160, because of the V-Guard energy, discarding 2 from his Pokemon. And now Sander will be able to start trying to activate his board. The issue is, does Sander have a way of getting energy back? He will have to try and Palpad a Silene into the slot, and then also begin using some of the energies from that, getting the energies from that way, from flipping some heads.
Indeed. So an interesting spot here for Sander. This deck very much teetering on the edge of breaking, and that's why a player such as Sander can pilot it. Otherwise, a lot of us would be making mistakes trying to deal with all these things. A lot of tough decisions and a lot of potential unlucky rolls available with the Silene. There's 2 Palpad in the deck.
He needs a heads here.
And the Silene needs to find at
one
least
heads.
a Palpad.
He's got 1 heads, which is fantastic for him. Looks to get the energy, because then he's going to try and eventually get that Mewtwo and that energy attached to Mewtwo VUnion gain. So he can get some energies, more energies onto the Mewtwo as well, then start working towards that.
Does he have the Palpad in hand then? Has he got the second one?
Yeah, I believe so.
Or second Silene in hand?
He does have options there. So at the moment, here it is. Here's the Mewtwo being formed. The 4 pieces of the puzzle here, and the Super Scoop Up to kind of remove that Snorlax out of play. The Mewtwo going into the active spot. Now just going to be attaching the...
just working out the puzzle.
Forming the big 4-card piece, and then there's the V-Guard energy attached as well, and we're likely to just see a Union gain attack.
Yeah, so needed that energy from the Silene. There was no other options there, but would have hoped to have 2 heads there, could start increasing the outs for that lock, because it does come to an awkward spot where if you're relying on 1 Silene to restart that lock by getting 2 Palpads, for example, or 1 Palpad, it does work out in your favour over a long period of time, but when you start getting towards this point where it's maybe 1 Silene or 1 Palpad away from breaking, he has to be careful, because it's a very thin deck, and next turn we'll see whether Sander can keep that lock going.
Yeah, he's just picked up one of the curliers that were in play with that Scoop Up net. does play the second one, and is just kind of identifying which one he wants to at least put in hand and identify the better route to victory right now. Does want to pick up the slightly weaker aspect there, because the Manaphy still kind of provides some protection in some way if anything else is somehow gusted up, or use an escape rope or another card that he may have missed.
And I guess the Serena is an extra 20 heal on top of the 200 heal from the Mewtwo VUnion when it is attacking with super regeneration.
There's the Union gain, now got free energy attached. So 1 energy away from being able to use Final Burn, which I believe is in the discard, but obviously can look for Silene opportunities to put that energy back in, but will want to rather put that that Pal Pad back in as well. So maybe we'll just have to find a way to keep just healing for the time being until he gets himself set up. Maybe with double Silene heads.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? The double Silene head starts to protect you from those ones where you might miss it. So if you do enough of the Pal Pads, enough of the Silenes over and over again, you will eventually regain back into the cycle fully in control. And I can't remember exactly what's in Sunder's hand. I think there is 1 Silene only. So next turn it might be fully reliant on that 1 Silene to get a Pal Pad.
There's the Star Portal, it looks like, being used by Mateusz. Just to kind of quickly interject there. It'd be interesting to see where he's actually going to apply these energies now. Obviously not really able to go for a double Curlier knockout, but still eyeing up that Greninja play as well. So it'd be interesting to see what he uses that and utilizes that for. Because already has the 2 energies on the Vicavolt. It's already in range of a Cysplosion, which is pretty, because of that attack by the Gardevoir. Does opt to go for the Palkias and attaches an air balloon. Starts wanting to try and deal damage with that Palkia VStar there.
So 7 bench Pokemon, 140 plus 60, that's 200 damage, which is the perfect number for the healing. But really, at this point, Sander wants to be taking knockouts. V-Guard energy, so it's minus 30, so that's...
It's got 1 head.
170.
1 heads with the Silene, and yeah, he's just going to aim for that Pal Pad again, because he's going to need to just keep chaining those for the moment whilst he heals. Of course, can he heal 220 with that Radiant Serena available with the Elegant Heal as well. So does have the extra reach in terms of healing, should suddenly the Echoing Horn help to reach higher numbers.
So we see those 2 Silenes going back into the deck. I know earlier on we did see the Silene loop be scooped up against by a player. And a lot of people were saying, why would you go against that? They might flip tails. And it's when you see it happening and it's 2 Pal Pads and 2 Silenes being juggled around, the chances of missing 4 Silene flips in a row is so unlikely.
It's so unlikely. That's why Sander often goes straight to the discard pile immediately when he does roll the die, even before it's finished. Does put the Pal Pad back to the top, and we're getting the loop here. He's just drawn into, of course, the Pal Pad that he's just put in. And it's just back and forth right now as both players pick up cards. The Pukimuku allowing to go back into the deck whilst he uses second Silene, double tails this time, which is vital. But he does have the double Power Pads there, so double Silene again, back to shuffle around where he may see the Pukimuku and could just draw straight back into one of them. So he's guaranteeing a Silene next turn. Just kind of confirming. It looks like it's just going to be a continuation of attack. There's the draw from Sander. There's the Silene. We rolling again. 1 heads. There's the Power Pad once again. But once he gets 1 more heads here, because he has double Power Pad available, he may look to just try and get that Super Scoop up to kind of get himself in a better position.
So Mateusz has just been playing to the outs of the attacks, and you see there scooping up. So you see how that cycle does work. It takes one of the Mewtwo VUnion pieces in the prices there, and a Peonia. There is 2 in the deck, but it's not going to be as easy to draw into, and typically he goes for the left column.
He has been, yes.
So he would naturally find it if he copies that strategy, but I don't know, maybe he mixes it up every time.
Yeah, as you can see, that massive right hand of Mewtwo there just kind of facing up at us from the prize cams. The Battle VIP's pass coming straight down from Mateusz as well. He's opened it every time, which is obviously great.
Does play 4 off, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly.
If he was playing 3 or 2, then we would call it lucky. But when you play 4, you should hit it every time, right?
Yeah.
That's why we all play 4.
The odds are again in your favor to be able to do so. Does have the speed energy as well to continue going into the deck. You know, that additional draw power alongside that 1 Marnie, the 4 Melanies, and concealed cards. So can typically draw sometimes 4 9 cards per turn, depending on which supporters he's using as well. Of course, turn 1, he's not able to attack, not able to play supporters, but having this kind of draw engine has allowed him to do so. Staring down at Sander's side of the board is that Ghastly we mentioned with that fade-out attack. Of course, that Ghastly really only used to be able to evolve using a rare candy into that Life Shaker Gengar to be able to move around damage counters as he so pleases around his psychic Pokemon.
Yeah, so not an optimal start there for Sander, but we'll see how he gets out of that. The draw engine not able to activate until turn 2 with refinement on the Curlier. But we do see on the other side that Heavy Ball, the Hisuian Heavy Ball, opting to not take either of the basic Pokemon there in the prizes. It is a you may situation, and in that situation would rather just leave them in the deck and discard the Hisuian Heavy Ball, as Pokemon in the discard pile was not something you'd like to have. So there's that Galarian Zigzagoon Headbutt Tantrum to get some damage on the Ghastly, and it might start putting it in range of a Vicavolt attack next turn.
It does indeed, with 60 HP, that Paralyzing Bolt, 50 damage, and Item Locking Sander is perfect numbers to knock out that Ghastly and begin taking prizes as soon as possible. Now, it's just down to Sander how he's going to be able to kind of play out of this situation. Of course, he wouldn't have liked to start Ghastly if he could, because he wanted to start one of his 4-Hours, but does have an Ultra Ball in hand and other Pokemon in hand. Double Ultra Ball, I believe, as well. Getting rid of that Radiant Serena, which he won't be utilizing in this matchup at all. Does have Curliers in hand, so it has a few different options available to him. But he's going to want to get that Snorlax into his hand as soon as possible, and I'm not too sure there's too many ways to do so.
Yeah, just keeping the Serena there. Going to be looking to get that Snorlax off of this search here. But we just saw again that Speed, Lightning, Energy, plus Concealed cards, drawing 4 cards, getting the energy where you want it as well. A Lightning Energy on the Vicavolt, a Water Energy in the discard pile, the 2 places you want to have them. So a draw engine and functional location placement of those energies. And we will see that Bruno...
The shuffle your hand into that and draw 4 cards, but if your Pokemon were knocked out on your opponent's last turn, you do get to draw 7. But as what we were expecting when Sander put it back into his hand in the last game, that opportunity to kind of reshuffle his hand, that massive hand back into his deck where he was getting a bit worried potentially about a deck out, it kind of doubles up as a bit of a safety net from that perspective. But here he's going to be looking for something like an energy just to kind of retreat into that Snorlax, but does find a Mewtwo piece with a Quick Ball. So it's just going to be kind of digging through, getting another routes out to be able to evolve into a Curlier at some stage so he can start drawing through. I suppose if he gives up the Ghastly, it's not too much of an issue. Yeah,
we should all be starting to get used to seeing routes and Curlier a little bit. Quite a recent addition to some decks, but it is one of those cards that will be there for the future. That sort of trade effect you mentioned, it's been historically so successful. You know, Cinccino or Cincino, I don't know.
Yeah.
Cincino with the
Make Do,
the same kind of thing. And then we had Zoroark GX back in the day with the trade.
There's also a Leopard with a very similar.
Bit hard to find those, a little bit too bulky to get with the level balls. But yeah, all of these kinds of abilities are amazing in the game because it not only allows you to draw, but it removes the cards that you don't want from your deck, so you're not just constantly going back into them where the Pidgeotto have passed.
Yeah.
It was good for control because it allowed you to keep resources, but sometimes if you want to dig a bit deeper, getting that discard involved is useful. So we see the board state setting up similarly to that first game from Mateusz, looking to get a knockout here with the Paralyzing Bolt, set up that item lock, and also start getting Greninja within range of attacking. And we do see no Manaphy down as well.
No. But we're kind of expecting the Ghastly to go down, and then it's just down to whether Sander's able to find the Manaphy to maybe protect some of those routes currently in play. I mean, it's... Oh, of course, the Serena did come down as well and heal the Ghastly.
Oh, it did?
Which is something...
But he was able to Galarian Zigzagoon again, because I think he had a scoop up net.
There you go, yeah.
So I think it was still within range.
But you're forcing resources out of Mateusz as well.
Scoop up net being a key part of the concealed cards engine to get it more useful, maybe to get a Mew out of the active spot, to use those Galarian Zigzagoon multiple times. And we see a similar story to last time, that Melanie onto the active Vicavolt to try and get it within range of potentially retreating.
Yeah, more energies in hand, ready to use concealed cards. That Star Portal, Palkia VStar coming down as well. So a number of options here. Will we see a repeat of turn game 1, and here we are exactly seeing that. There's leaving that speed energy on that Vicavolt V, and here comes that incredible ability we've seen across so many tournaments now, not typically just in this fashion of the deck, but with Palkia in itself now being able to take out 2 Curliers on Sander's side of the board with that Radiant Greninja's Moonlight Shuriken.
Yeah, and it just puts so many of the draw support for Sander through Pokemon out of play, making it harder to dig through the deck. And as we mentioned, Mewtwo VUnion, you have to naturally draw into it a lot of the time because Ultra Ball is the only way to search for Pokemon, and VUnion pieces aren't considered basics or evolutions. It has to just be Pokemon search, and consequently, it's going to make it much tougher as we do see a Refinement Curlier down. And we do see a Mewtwo VUnion piece in the prizes. So the Mewtwo VUnion is quite far away at this point. 3 prizes remaining for Mateusz. Just needs to get a few more knockouts. There's the Echoing Horn that we saw in Game 1 that is in hand for Mateusz. And so a few options here to try and finish off this game through taking out these single prize Pokemon.
Yeah, and so just thinking about Sander's hand right now, that it's not actually a massive amount. Does have another Trekking Shoes. If he keeps putting cards like this into his hand, he won't really be able to use Gormandize to full effect, to full value. Does have a number of energies in hand, a couple of Scoop Up Nets. Just looking to try to see what he attaches to, which is that Serena. Of course, it will be a Scoop Up target at some stage. Found of ways to remove the energy from the Vicavolt. You know, it's kind of awkward right now, and the Silene's there to kind of support double heads. I wonder if Sano actually wanted double heads because he wants to kind of be drawing through a number of certain cards. Identifying now what he may need to take from his discard pile to put to the top for that Gormandize. Of course, can start trying to refresh those routes if required, or just other pieces of the puzzle. Just get Mewtwo out now. He is on a clock, and that's the hardest thing right now because of the 3 prizes already taken by Mateusz.
Yeah, exactly. So the Trekking Shoes, you can see, is an attempt to try and dig a bit deeper, which is what the attempted Gormandize will be next turn. The Ultra Ball as well. And the kind of cards we see from that Silene aren't typically Trekking Shoes and Ultra Ball, but they will be available next turn.
I think the scary thing from Sander's point of view is that will that Vicavolt be able to come back into the active spot and just nullify those cards to being very ineffective.
I guess the Fan of Waves was just a fingers crossed moment there. I'll try and make it as hard as possible for Vicavolt, but this is the exact same route we saw in Game 1 from Mateusz. And there we go. We see a Gormandize pass. I don't even know if there's enough space for Gormandize with the cards in hand.
He played a number of cards out. But there's the Luminion. There's a Scoop Up Net. Now Mateusz will be looking to pick up one of his single prizes. Use Luminion to grab a Melanie, of course. Number of cards in his own hand. Maybe doesn't even need to do that. Just kind of thinning out and getting the cards that he might need to. Goes for the Palkia.
It's like deja vu watching this. Yeah. This is exactly the route he took in that Game 1. It was mighty effective as well. I think Game 2, the only thing stopping Mateusz was his own ability to fulfill this game plan. And Sander was able to get that Mewtwo VUnion eventually.
There's that cross switch onto the Curlier as well. So removing all refinement options here, or draw options on Sander's side of the board, dealing plenty of damage to KO and 80 HP. Curlier there, and it's back over to Sander with 2 prizes remaining for Mateusz. Again, this is the turn where he needs to get Mewtwo out, and it's very unlikely because one piece of the puzzle is currently sitting in those prizes, so he will have to Peonia this turn as well as get the remaining pieces from his deck.
And he'd have to Peonia the right 3 cards as well, which isn't guaranteed. And there is one Peonia in the prizes, so it's not going to naturally draw into that very well. So not looking good right now for Sander. But what we are seeing is Mateusz's deck work this matchup well. You can see, we mentioned it before about that excitable drawing and searching of cards that we see from players when they feel in a good position. And right now I'm getting that body language from Mateusz. All these little fidgety movements, very comfortable, knows it's within reach, only 2 more knockouts required, plenty of single prize Pokemon in play available for Mateusz to knock out. So he's just going to hope to announce 2 more attacks and he'll be going through to that semi-final. But there's the Peonia. We'll be getting that Mewtwo VUnion piece. So it is possible now for Sander to start getting that lock.
Yeah, just trying to find a way to get all of those pieces. He'll be... I think there's at least 1 in the discard right now. It's
Ultra Ball in hand.
Yeah, Ultra Ball in hand now as well. It's just, is it too little too late at this stage without those Curliers, without the opportunity to kind of use that refinement to help discard them as well? There's that one piece staring at us. There's the Ultra Ball. It's just whether he can get the final 2 pieces. Yep, I think that is. Oh, maybe even 3.
It's a lot to ask, isn't it? Mewtwo VUnion, a wonderful card when it's out in play, but so frequently we see its demise being it's stuck in the deck, never making its way out onto the playfield, as we do see now that final piece needed from the deck. Will it happen? Sander is looking to do it this turn. He knows he's on a clock. 2 prizes remaining for Mateusz. Going to be very tricky to do so here. We see a Gorman dies, I believe, there to finish his turn as Mateusz poised, ready to start his turn and try and initiate another knockout here.
Yeah, and I don't think we have seen the echoing horn in the discard pile of Mateusz yet. I don't think there was any sort of unfortunate discards during his turn so far, so Sander will be looking at that thinking your hand is massive. It's very likely you're going to have all these cards here. There's the Melanie as well to continue drawing through.
Oh, and a speed lightning energy as well. That Vicavolt up to the super zap cannon range. It's the same board state we saw last time, really trying to put it in range of being a secondary attacker in case that Palkia is unable to finish. Can
still use concealed cards as well, but obviously doesn't need to. Does take the knockout. The Snorlax just down to 1 prize now. Here's the free retreater, Radiant Serena, because it's got 2 energy attached. And right now we'll be able to utilize 1 trade, so that's 1 piece of deposit, another 1 piece of deposit to go in. There's the Ultra Ball to kind of get 1 more piece out further.
So is that everything then? So the Ultra Ball getting rid of 1, another 1.
There's 2 there remaining.
So that's going to be that there. Was that the Shadow Rider Calyrex, or was that another piece of the Mewtwo VUnion in the deck?
Or maybe I've seen it incorrectly.
I think that's the Shadow Rider Calyrex in there, so I believe that's all the pieces after this refinement. So that'll be Mewtwo VUnion ready to come out the discard pile. And at this point, though, it needs more than that. It needs to be able to remove everything from play. And then there's also that echoing horn strategy we saw Mateusz pull off in game 1 that's available.
There are free scoop up nets in Sander's hand right now as well. So it's just kind of getting some of those pieces where he doesn't want to be seeing. He's going to have to pitch for an additional card. I couldn't see whether there was an energy in his hand as well, which is, oh, of course, there's a Psychic. There's the pitch for 1 card at the top. There's a Shadow Rider, and the Mewtwo will be coming out now with 3 scoop-ups in hand. It will clear the board, but Mateusz will just have to have access to a cross-switch a Gust and the Echoing Horn.
Yeah, Escape Rope was removed at the beginning. It was discarded early on. I don't think Boss's Orders has been used yet. So there's a Boss's Orders and a cross-switcher potential. I think he's used 1 pair of cross-switchers. So the Gust outs are available for Mateusz. He has the Echoing Horn in hand. You see at the top there. Straight away, going to be taking that from the discard pile. Now needs to find the Gust approach, and it's not going to be straight away. Scoop up nets the Zigzagoon. Gives him access to Aluminium. That's going to open up the opportunity to search out his deck for the Boss's Orders. Boss's Orders routes into the active, knockout there, and that is going to be Mateusz moving on to the semi-finals.
Yeah, fantastic play by Mateusz. He's been able to execute his game plan multiple times against, that deck.